Let us offer our consecration to the Lord. Lord, we offer up to you this day, and as we offer ourselves to you, help us to do your will and to seek to serve you, know you, love you, and honor you. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Well, today, of course, is Monday, and we are now in a whole different week. We're also in a whole different set of readings. But what's going to make this really important is that we understand the past several weeks have been giving us a foundation, which is part of why they are there. The other reason is because they just happen to be from the first book of the Bible. And now, as we enter into the 15th week of Ordinary Time, we go into the next book of the Bible. So we've seen the foundation. How is it that the Jews ended up in Egypt? How is it prior to that they ended up with the Promised Land? And now, as we enter into Exodus, and if you go to your favorite daily reading source, which could be, as we know, the Word Among Us or Magnificat or Bible.usccb.org, among others, you will see that we're in the first chapter of Exodus, and now we have the whole story begins of how the Jews ended up back on the Promised Land. So what happens is we have the whole story that preceded, which is the story of Joseph during the famine, who first is sold into slavery. He ends up in Egypt. He ends up as being as powerful as the Pharaoh. There is a famine in Israel, and people start to leave Israel to come to Egypt, including his brothers, Joseph's brothers, who are the sons of Jacob, also known as Israel. And so they come into Egypt, and now for a while, the Egyptians and the Hebrews live together very well. But then all of a sudden there is, as we see in today's reading, a suspicious king who comes to be in charge. And he comes to realize that, hey, these Hebrews living among us, even though we're getting along with them now, at any moment they could turn on us. And so we need to do preemptive work to make sure that happens. So obviously that isn't the words that are in there. And so in response, we will turn on them. And so it begins. The first line of that is reminding that this new king knew nothing of Joseph. And now he is the Pharaoh, even though the term used is king. He is the Pharaoh, and he overlooks Egypt, and he now calls for an end to this mutual experience of the Egyptians and the Hebrews. And so in this first reading comes that demand that every firstborn child, male, that is born to the Hebrews must be cast into the river. Actually, I said firstborn. That was a mistake. Every male child born must be cast into the river. And so this is a powerful reality that happens. Do these kind of things still happen? Well, don't forget China's one child policy, that you could only have one child. And there it was. If there was a second child, the second child would have to be aborted. And I think one of the things that happened, if I'm not wrong, one of the problems with that is that therefore female children were not well accepted, and therefore there is an overwhelming number of male children and not of female children because of this one-child policy. So can that stuff happen? It happens. It happens all the time. And so we're seeing that. And of course, we know in our own country we have the issues where we have policies that ensure people cannot be born. So we're looking at all of that, and this is all part of the way politics can happen when it is separated from the Lord and it becomes divorced from God. I mean, we've seen genocides happen in the past, and it's the same idea. It's a group of leaders in a country decide we don't want those people there, So we are going to eliminate those people. And this is genocides happen, and they happen all the time in every generation, at least in one form or another. Genocides happen, not necessarily in every country, obviously, but we see that. And this is what we're seeing here. This policy comes in, this law comes in because this new Pharaoh does not trust the Hebrews, and so he spreads this rule. And it's a powerful reality and a powerful reminder that governments can go south like that. And this is what happens here. And it's very simply that every male child needs to be destroyed. And therefore, there will also be the reality that the Hebrews will be put into slavery. And how does it begin? This new Pharaoh did not understand the history of Joseph. We're going to talk more on the other side of the break. You're listening to St. Anthony Overnight from St. Anthony Parish in Alston, Massachusetts. Don't forget to tell others where they can find our program. You can hear us on WEZE 590 AM and WEZEradio.com at midnight and 3 o'clock in the morning, Monday through Friday, Eastern Time. We then podcast the program on your favorite podcast platform and at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can also hear us on our parish website, ST for StAnthonyAlston.org. That's StAnthonyAlston.org. And let others know where they can find us and spread the word and subscribe to our podcast. And we're back. And so we're talking about this powerful story here that comes to us from this first chapter in Exodus. So we're talking about how governments can change overnight, just like this. And so that's what happens. Suddenly, the government changes, and all of a sudden, we have these new policies in place that are oppressive against the Hebrews. And as we said, this happens all the time. You know, there's the famous, in Turkey, the famous Armenian genocide that went on. And there was obviously the purging that happened in Soviet Russia, and over again. We know of there was the Uyghurs that's going on in China. And at the same time, you had the candidate from Florida. This is the former or the current mayor of Miami, who had no idea who the Uyghurs were, and actually kind of mocked the Uyghurs a bit, and everyone realized that was a huge mistake, because there is the genocide going on in China with that. And there's even another side of the genocide, which we were touched on a bit here in the Alston-Brighton area here in Massachusetts, where the FBI arrested a man who turned out to be a spy for the Chinese government, and allegedly. And of course, what's the issue that people are saying is they're trying to oppress those who are also from China to make sure they understand they better not disobey policies of the Chinese government. But they are in our country now, and these spies for the Chinese government have no business being here. But even that oppression that still happens from even in other areas from other governments on our own land, which is not allowed in any sense of the reality. So we look at all these policies that can happen, and here we see it in Egypt. So it's not something that is not possible. It's very possible, and we see it happen all the time. So we get back to the story that now every male child has to be killed when they come out of the womb. Why would that be the case? Why would they wait until they come out of the womb? Well, the answer is obvious, because they didn't have gender reveal realities prior to the 1960s anyway. And I think it was actually later than that. So there was no way of understanding the actual gender of the child until he or she was born. And so when they found out the child was male, they decided to destroy the child. So you have all of this going on as per this government policy that comes in place. Can happen at any time. That's why it's always important to be vigilant for freedom, but vigilant for freedom in both ways. And that means you want to protect your freedoms, but you also want to protect others, even if you disagree with them. Because the freedom, like, for example, freedom of speech. You may totally disagree with somebody. You may totally be against anything someone may believe in. But they have a right to say it, and we have to stand up for that. And if people turn around and say, well, we're not going to allow people to speak like that, then you lose your freedom of speech, even if someone says something that you feel they shouldn't be said. There is a new law coming, actually it's a bill in, I believe it's the House of Representatives here in Massachusetts. And they want to make it that you cannot ban books in Massachusetts libraries. Well, I support that 100%. Well, what about if someone publishes books that we don't like? If you allow those books, then you have to allow all books. And that's why I support this. What is the official religion of Massachusetts according to the Constitution of Massachusetts? It's Protestantism. Always know that. So yeah, what if someone banned the Catholic Bible? See, we don't want to do that. So these things can happen. We'll talk more tomorrow. Have yourself a blessed day. I want to call your attention to Catholic TV, which offers great faith-filled, family-friendly programming 24 hours a day. You can find your cable channel at www.getcatholictv.com, and you can watch online on the free apps or check out the YouTube channel. Daily Mass, Rosaries, the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and the Our Lady of Perpetual Help Novena are all available online and on demand. Check out CatholicTV.com. If you would like to support our program, please consider a donation to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. There are several ways to consider this. One is to purchase any of our merchandise, which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. There are coffee mugs there. There's also my latest book, Encounter Christ in Your Humanity, all of which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can also donate to the show directly through either the Donate tab, also at CatholicAudiomedia.com, or by sending a donation through the U.S. Postal Service with your questions and comments at 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. That's St. Anthony Parish, 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. Finally, the best way you can support our parish is to attend Mass on Sundays at 10 o'clock and be a part of our parish. We thank you for any support you would like to give to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts, the sponsoring parish for this media outreach to Catholics and other Christians in the WROL, WEZE, and podcast listening audience. In Cristo vivimos.